Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, every single edition, and we're going to boil each edition down to one word so that we can have a 5-word map to every single edition of Dungeons & Dragons. So this is the J. Scott Garibay boil down. We're going to look at every single Dungeons & Dragons edition, and we're going to boil it down to one word, okay? Now, when we do that, we're going to look at the game in its holistic view, right? I'm not just looking at rules mechanics. I'm not just looking at, which races were, which lineages were included, which classes were included. I'm looking at Dungeons & Dragons as it fits in the world, in our actual IRL world, right? So let's go forward. Dungeons & Dragons, first edition, okay? So 1974, and I think this stretches out till about until we get to serious advanced Dungeons & Dragons. There's always a little bit of a blurred line on when 60, but this goes at least until like 1982, between 1982 and 1986, before Advanced Dungeons & Dragons really gets on its feet and 2E is really in position, okay? So, and certainly everything in the 70s is first edition. All right, so let's talk about that. Dungeons & Dragons 1E, fully under Gary Gygax. What is the one word that captures Dungeons & Dragons 1E better than any other word? I'll tell you right now. Innovation. The creation of Dungeons & Dragons is really like nothing that has ever been seen in America or anywhere else in the world. So it's an American invention. It blends narrative, literature, art, and gaming. Okay. I would also say there's an element of social modeling within it. There's a whole lot of things within Dungeons & Dragons. The innovation is so powerful that I think to this very day we don't fully understand what Dungeons & Dragons is. Okay. It's much, much more than most people expect. And certainly in 1974, the innovation that Dungeons & Dragons delivered with is just world-shattering. Like when it comes to a whole bunch of different, when it comes to story, when it comes to role-playing interaction, when it comes to gaming, when it comes to art, like Dungeons & Dragons would be so powerful in its innovation, it would literally reshape dozens of industries, okay? And it would create industries. It would create entire industries. You know what the dice industry was before Dungeons & Dragons? Are you kidding me? Like, it was a fraction of what it is now, okay? You can get dice made out of mammoth bones. Like, that comes from Dungeons & Dragons. That doesn't come from any other game in the world, right? All right, so, and of course, I think Dungeons & Dragons is a lot more than a game, but you know where I'm heading. All right. Second edition, right? One word capturing second edition is acceleration, okay? Gary Gygax knew, I think he had a strong sense that Dungeons & Dragons was going to be a hit. He believed in it. You know he believed in it because when $4,000 was needed to make the first printing, Gary Gygax put up $1,000. Don Kay put up another $1,000. He would die less than 2 years later from a heart attack at the age of 36. All right, Don Kay, one of the last noble acts of his life was funding Dungeons & Dragons first edition, okay? And then Brian Bloom, one of the Bloom brothers, would put up the other $2,000. Dave Artisan put up nothing, which matched his attachment to the game, in my opinion, okay? All right, so 1E comes out, and Gary Gygax and, everybody who believed in it, Gary Gygax, Don Kay, Brian Bloom, who put their money where their mouth was, had to back the game and push it forward, right? But when second edition hit, it was a whole different ball game, right? Dungeons & Dragons was a hit. There's no two ways about it. It sold out many, many, many books. Players wanted it. They wanted more of it. It was a growing concern, right? 2E really put the hammer down. Like they put the pedal down on acceleration. And the game simply accelerated between, I'd say, like 1986 and 1997, right? Actually, specifically, third edition would come out in 2001. In 1997, Wizards of the Coast would buy Dungeons & Dragons, they would sell it 2 years later to Hasbro in 1999. All right? So, but 1E, innovation. 2E, acceleration. Okay? 3E, let's talk about 3rd edition, right? And we're really talking about 3.5. Nobody cares about 3.0, but let's say 3.5, 3rd edition. When I say 3rd edition, I mean 3.5. Commercialization, all right? Now, at this point, 3rd edition, the game is now owned by Wizards of the Coast, which is owned by Hasbro Gaming, okay? And what you see in 3rd edition is you see the first actually viably profitable Dungeons & Dragons. Prior to this, Dungeons & Dragons has made lots of revenue, okay? But because it was not managed optimally, okay, there was never a point where while it was making lots of revenue, it wasn't making lots of profit, because the people who were handling the business side of it were spending almost or more than, and there was certainly points where they were spending more than they were making, right? But actually that disappears in 3rd edition, okay? Under very much, I'll say it, much more solid management, right, of Wizards of the Coast with Hasbro oversight, the game is financially sound, right? And you see a point where all things indicate that that expenses are lower than revenue. The game is profitable. Everybody who's printing the game is getting paid. It's just a much more sound business venture, right? The other thing that happened with 3rd edition, Dungeons & Dragons, first and only time, it's the only time this has been the case, right? They made a really fully robust OGL, open gaming license. And they said Dungeons & Dragons is our world and it's your world, right? You have to follow these specific rules, but if you do, you can write official Dungeons & Dragons accessory material, and you can literally put the Dungeons & Dragons name on your product, right? This would only really happen in 3rd edition. It has been massively pulled back for 4th edition, and it's very much been pulled back in 5th edition. DM's Guild is there, but it really is nothing like the open gaming license that existed for 3rd edition. There was an explosion of books for Wizards of the Coast in 3rd edition. There was an explosion of books for tons of other side companies that were not official Dungeons & Dragons. They were not Wizards of the Coast, but they were printing official Dungeons & Dragons books, which is pretty incredible. And so 3rd edition is really commercialization, okay? 4th edition, deceleration, okay? 2nd edition was acceleration. 4th edition was deceleration. I cannot tell you this clearly enough. We were a hair's breadth away from losing the game. 4th edition was so disliked by the community, it sundered the Dungeons & Dragons community in half. Okay, half the people saying this is okay, and half the people saying I will jump in a lake before I play this thing. Right, I am not happy with this. Right, and just people really not happy with 4th edition. 4th edition was so calamitous that it actually created Pathfinder, Dungeons & Dragons' greatest competitor to this day, right? 4th edition was a deceleration of the game's momentum. 5th edition is representation. More than anything that matters for 5th edition, not the rules, not the art, not the books, not streaming, nothing, right? Nothing is more D&D 5e than representation. Who played the game in the past? Who's playing the game now? Who should play it? Who shouldn't play it? Is this culture accurately represented in 5e, 4e, 3e, 1e? How does 5e compare all those? Who should be allowed to write this game? What culture should be included? Which ones should not? Just a huge focus on representation, right? Now, there are issues with it being, with the game being so concerned with representation. Now, there are also some significant games. I think without a doubt we see more female writers, more writers who are people of color, more writers who are of different preferences. Just a whole slew of different representation happening within the writership, the design of the game, right? And I think we're even seeing a more robust, a more wider group of people who are playing, DMing, playing, all of that, right? There have been some challenges with it being so focused on. Actually, I think one of the things that's interesting is, I think one of the reasons why we're now able to, why D&D 5e is able to be so focused on representation, is the fact that commercialization happened in 3e, and Dungeons and Dragons is firmly commercially safe. And I really don't, if you look back at history, the game was never financially safe. It just wasn't financially safe in 1e or 2e, right? It was always teetering on the brink of going out of existence. I just watched the last Blockbuster, right? And, video stores are essentially gone. They're almost finished, right? And Dungeons & Dragons could have gone the way of the dodo. And 1e and 2e were quite perilous, if you look at those histories. But we went through innovation, we went through acceleration, we went through commercialization, we went through decelerization, right? And now we're in the age of representation. All that's my opinion. What do you think? What words would you map to each one of the 5 editions? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.